Oh, fantastic. They're letting these people on now? Ethan Carr's voice knifed through the buzzing cabin, sharp enough that even the passengers in row 10 raised their heads. He was staring directly at Malik Johnson. No, not staring, evaluating, sizing him up like garbage left in the aisle. Look at him, Ethan scoffed. Backpack from a thrift store, clothes straight out of a clearance bin. Did the airline start selling lottery tickets for seats now? A few passengers snickered. Others smirked behind hands. A woman whispered, "He looks rough." Malik felt the heat in his ears. He hadn't even reached his row yet. He clutched his backpack, a faded, overstuffed relic from high school, against his chest. Inside, wedged between notebooks and his mom's hospital papers, lay the rejection letter that crushed him only hours earlier. He kept moving. Row 17, middle seat. Ethan was already sprawled across the row like he owned it. Designer jacket, expensive cologne, polished arrogance. His gold watch glinted like it had its own spotlight. The moment Malik stepped closer, Ethan coughed dramatically into his sleeve. "Oh, come on," he groaned loudly. "You're kidding me. They're seating him next to me? I paid actual money for this seat. I don't need a charity case in my space." Malik kept his voice soft. "Sorry. I just need to get to my seat." Ethan smirked, leaning back so Malik could see every ounce of disdain dripping off him. "Of course you do," he said. "You people always think you're entitled to squeeze in wherever you want." A couple across the aisle exchanged a knowing look. A businessman shook his head with a sigh. Someone muttered, "Should have known." Malik tried to slip into the row, but Ethan blocked the leg space with deliberate slowness. "Careful," Ethan said mockingly. "Keep your backpack away from my laptop. I don't need fingerprints or accidents on it." Passengers nearby chuckled. One whispered, "Yeah, watch your stuff." Malik's throat tightened. "I'm not trying to bother anyone." "That's the problem," Ethan shot back. "You don't have to try." Malik sank into the middle seat, shoulders pressed inward. His backpack went under the seat, barely fitting. His knee brushed Ethan's leg by accident. Ethan recoiled like he'd touched fire. "Oh, unbelievable!" he barked. "Can you not lean on me? Stay in your little square. Your bargain bin seat doesn't entitle you to extra inches." Malik whispered, "Sorry." "Talk louder," Ethan snapped. "If you're going to mumble, mumble somewhere else. Actually, why are you on this flight? Trying to sneak into some fancy college? Running away from something? What is it?" Malik blinked hard, forcing back the sting. "I'm just going home." "Sure you are," Ethan sneered, rolling his eyes. "Always a story." A boy across the aisle tugged his dad's sleeve. "Dad had trouble." The dad didn't even lower his voice. People like him usually are. Malik's heart cracked a little. The overhead lights flickered. The cabin settled. Engines hummed. Ethan pressed the call button before takeoff even began. The flight attendant, a woman with the brittle cheerfulness of someone who'd smiled too much for too many years, approached. "Yes, Mr. Carr? How can I help you?" Ethan pointed directly at Malik with a disgusted thumb. "This guy's making me uncomfortable." The attendant blinked. "Sir? What seems to be the issue?" "The issue?" Ethan scoffed loudly. "Look at him, fidgeting, guarding his backpack like he's hiding something. Keeps checking the aisle, sweating, jumping. I don't feel safe with him next to me. And neither does half the cabin. Look around." A few passengers nodded reflexively, eager to agree with status and confidence. "He's acting strange," someone whispered. "Why is he clutching his bag?" "I don't like it." Malik shook his head. I wasn't doing anything." "Oh, save it," Ethan said sharply. "This is a plane, not a bus stop. Some people need to learn they can't make others uncomfortable just by existing." The attendant's eyes flickered to Ethan's Platinum Elite tag, then to Malik's discounted paper boarding pass. Decision made. "Sir," she said to Malik, using that sugary, firm tone people use to escort problems out of stores, "I'm going to ask you to move seats Malik stared at her, stunned. For what? I didn't. It's a precaution, she said. We need to prioritize the comfort of all passengers. You mean his comfort, Malik murmured. Exactly, Ethan said proudly. Finally, someone gets it. The attendant straightened. Sir, gather your belongings. Malik's face burned. A wave of embarrassment swept over him as every passenger in earshot stared, judged, decided. He stood slowly, feeling the weight of 50 eyes. His backpack strap caught on the armrest. Someone snickered. Someone else pulled their bag away as if afraid he'd touch it. Ethan leaned back, smug. See? Order restored. The flight attendant led Malik through the aisle. Not beside her, but a step ahead, like she was escorting a threat she didn't want too close. Whispers followed him. They always cause issues. He looked jumpy the second he got on. He shouldn't have been seated up here anyway. Row after row, humiliation built like a tide rising up his throat. Finally, the back. Seat 32B, the toilet seat row. The sulfur-sweet bathroom smell wafted into the aisle. The seat barely reclined. The line for the restroom snaked right beside it. Passengers in line stared at him with mild annoyance. Just another obstacle in the way. The attendant gestured. This is available? Malik choked on the air. I wasn't a problem. She didn't look him in the eyes. Thank you for cooperating. She turned back quickly, almost gratefully, escaping the discomfort of seeing what she'd done. Malik slid into the narrow seat. Someone's backpack brushed his head. The bathroom door slammed inches from his knee. He sat there, swallowing shame, while laughter floated from somewhere up the aisle. Back in row 17, Ethan was already bragging. See, you deal with these situations early and you don't have chaos on flights. They should thank me. The plane rumbled. Lights dimmed. Passengers relaxed. Everyone, except the boy in seat 32B. Malik stared at the tiny safety card, at the worn carpet, at nothing. For the first time in a long while, he felt like the world had made his place clear. The poor black kid belongs in the back, out of sight, out of mind, out of worth. But somewhere inside the humiliation, a fire lit, small, quiet, but alive. The plane climbed into the clouds, but Malik felt like he was sinking deeper into the floor. Up in row 17, Ethan Carr wasted no time reclaiming the spotlight. The moment the seatbelt sign turned off, he pressed the call button again, hard, like he was slapping it. The chime echoed across the cabin. Passengers looked back, annoyed, but Ethan didn't care. He wanted an audience. The same flight attendant hurried over, wearing the strained smile of someone who knew this passenger was trouble, but the expensive kind they had to obey. Yes, Mr. Carr? Ethan pointed dramatically toward the back. Are you seriously just going to pretend nothing happened back there? You moved him, sure, but I still feel unsafe. I need reassurance. Sir, the situation has been addressed. Clearly, it hasn't. Ethan leaned forward, voice sharp enough to cut oxygen. I watched him walk away, gripping that backpack like a bomb. Did you search it? Did anyone check what he has? Or do you just let anyone bring anything on board now? Gasps rippled. A teenager in row 18 twisted around, eyes wide. A businessman muttered, This is why flights feel unsafe. The attendant stiffened. Sir, please lower your voice. Ethan ignored her. I mean, come on, he said loudly, gesturing toward the rear. Did you see him? Twitchy, jittery, sweating through that cheap jacket. He kept looking around like he was casing the cabin. Malik, even from the back, could hear Ethan's voice booming. A woman in the bathroom line glanced at him with suspicion. A man subtly shielded his child. Shame crawled up Malik's spine like a cold hand. Back in row 17, Ethan kept going. And don't act like I'm the only one who saw it, he said, scanning the cabin. Half the rows were watching him. Tell them. Passengers, pressured, exchanged glances. A middle-aged white man shrugged and said, He did look tense. Exactly, Ethan snapped. And now he's sitting right by the bathroom? Perfect. Great idea. Put the suspicious one next to everyone's belongings while they line up. Brilliant safety strategy. The attendant inhaled sharply. Sir, please let me handle this. Oh, I will, Ethan said, raising an eyebrow. But if this airline is going to put my safety at risk, you'd better believe I'm filing a report. Platinum members don't pay thousands to sit next to situations like that. There it was again, not a slur, something worse, a label that stripped Malik of his humanity, a situation. Down in seat 32B, Malik closed his eyes. The words echoed. He felt every whisper, every stare. His hands trembled. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't threatening anyone. He wasn't suspicious. He was just a poor black kid trying to get home. But in this metal tube in the sky, he had already been put on trial, and the jury was eager to convict. The flight attendant moved closer to Ethan, lowering her voice. Please, Mr. Carr. The young man is compliant. He hasn't done anything. Yet, Ethan said. He hasn't done anything yet. That's the point. You wait until something happens? That's your policy? He tapped his platinum tag as if it were a badge. You know who I am, right? I don't just fly this airline. I invest in it. I know people in corporate. I'll make one call and this whole cabin will know your name by morning. Her face tightened. Passengers around them leaned in. Status was speaking, and people loved a show. Ethan continued, louder. Look, I get it, he said, sounding like a man giving a lecture he believed the world desperately needed. You try to be nice to everyone. Equality, kindness, whatever. Cute idea. But the reality is, some people don't belong in certain seats. It's not personal. It's just how the world works. Malik couldn't stop himself. He leaned into the aisle, trying to catch her eye. I'm not a threat, he said, voice shaking but firm. I just want to go home. Ethan spun around so fast it startled the people in row 18. Oh, would you shut up? He snapped. You already caused enough trouble when you were up here. Now you want to insert yourself again? Sit down. Keep your head down. Do what you're told. A woman in line for the restroom murmured, Maybe you should just listen. Don't cause any more issues. Malik sank back into his cramped seat, breath thinning. He looked like an eyesore among the tired parents, business travelers, and daylight lounge elites. The outsider. The inconvenience. The problem. The flight attendant, flustered, tried to regain control. Mr. Carr, please relax. The passenger is seated safely. If there's any further issue... Oh, there will be, Ethan said coldly. And when something happens, you'll wish you took my warning seriously. Passengers murmured in agreement. Yeah, this cabin feels tense now, a woman said. Why didn't they just deny him boarding? Someone else muttered. He looked off from the start, a man added. You could tell. Malik's throat closed. He wanted to disappear, to fade into the seat cushioning, to melt into the floor. But he sat upright instead, quiet, still, dignified in a place designed to strip dignity away. A mother pulled her daughter closer as she passed him. The little girl whispered, Mama, why is he sitting way back here? Her mother replied in a low voice, Because that's where they put people who make others nervous. Malik flinched. The words cut deeper than Ethan's. Ethan reclined comfortably again, satisfied. That's better, he said. Cabin's peaceful now. The plane rumbled. The lights dimmed to a gentle blue. Passengers settled into movies and tablets. But for Malik, there was no settling. Only the steady drum of humiliation and the ache of being made into a symbol of fear. He sat motionless, breathing slow, like a man trying not to break. Somewhere deep inside, a fuse lit. Not a loud one, a quiet, resilient flame. The kind that burns for years, the kind that remembers. The seatbelt sign dinged off again, but Malik barely heard it. He sat in 32B, crushed between the wall and a broad-shouldered man whose elbow claimed half the armrest like territory. The bathroom door slammed again, and again, and again. The smell, stale disinfectant mixed with something sour, poured out with each opening. Every footstep, every sigh, every annoyed glance, all of it flowed toward him, settling on his skin like grime he couldn't scrub off. The line for the restroom formed immediately. A dozen people, standing, shifting, hovering inches from his knees. And every single one of them, every one, looked at him like he was exactly where he belonged. A man in a suit stepped into the aisle and frowned. "This is where they moved you?" he asked Malik, voice dripping pity coated with judgment. "Well, I guess it makes sense." Malik tried to answer, but the man had already turned away. Another passenger stepped forward and bumped Malik's shoulder. "Watch it," the man snapped. Malik whispered, "You bumped me, and you're in everyone's way. Don't start." He pressed back into his seat, shoulders aching. 30 feet ahead, Ethan lounged comfortably in his aisle seat, sipping ginger ale like he'd won a prize. He twisted in his seat just enough to glance back toward the rear. When he spotted Malik in the toilet row seat, his lips spread into a crooked, triumphant smile. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. Malik's stomach churned. The bathroom line grew longer. A woman with a baby stopped directly in front of Malik. She took in his tired eyes, his wrinkled clothes, the way he tried to shrink himself smaller. Her eyes narrowed. She clutched her baby tighter, as if being near Malik threatened her child. She whispered to the man beside her, "I told you he seemed off. Look at him, sitting there like he's waiting for something." The man nodded. "Probably why they moved him." Malik's chest tightened. His fingers curled into his jeans until the nails dug into his skin. He wanted to scream. He wanted to speak up. He wanted to ask, "Why? Why are you treating me like this?" But he stayed silent, because he knew how quickly raised voices from people like him were twisted into aggression. He knew too well. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Every single bathroom door slam ricocheted through him. Every glare chipped another piece off his dignity. The worst was the constant whispering. "He's been moved twice already. There must have been a reason. He looks nervous. That's what scares me. Always trouble on flights nowadays." Malik stared at the back of the seat in front of him, trying to breathe. He imagined his dream, flying a jet, calm hands on the controls, blue sky stretching forever. But the dream felt impossibly far, like a star you see but can never reach. A passenger approached, stepping dangerously close to Malik's knees. "Move!" the man barked. "There's no room," Malik murmured. "Then figure it out," the man snapped. "I'm not stepping over you." Malik pulled his legs painfully sideways. The man squeezed past and muttered, "Unbelievable they seated him here. This is supposed to be a shared area." Shared. Except Malik wasn't seen as part of the shared. He was seen as the obstruction. Then Ethan pressed the call button again. The sound rang through the cabin like a summons from a king. The flight attendant rushed over, irritation barely concealed. "Yes, Mr. Carr." Ethan gestured toward the back. "You see the commotion he's already causing from back there? People are uncomfortable just walking by him. They're staring at him, whispering. Why? Because they can sense it." "Sense what?" the attendant asked weakly. "That he doesn't belong here," Ethan said matter-of-factly. "And honestly, neither you nor the airline did anything serious to address the situation." Passengers nodded. Murmurs rose. The entire cabin was being trained, coached, pressured into believing Malik was a threat. The flight attendant's gaze wavered. "Sir," she said to Ethan, "please try to relax. We can't move him again." "Well, then you need to keep an eye on him," Ethan insisted. "I saw him earlier fidgeting like he was about to snap. These flights get stressful, and guys like that, well, everyone knows how it goes." Malik heard every word. It sliced through him. Guys like that. A shape, a stereotype, a shadow. People feared for no reason except the color of his skin and the price of his seat. The bathroom line grew again. A teenage boy eyed Malik with exaggerated caution. His father whispered just loud enough, "Stay clear of him, son." The boy nodded, stepping away as if Malik carried disease. Malik felt something crack inside. Him. Quiet but deep. Not rage, not yet. Hurt, the kind that stays. The kind that becomes memory. A heavy-set man turned around in the line and said, "If you're going to sit here, at least don't stare at people." Malik blinked. "I'm looking at the floor." "Well, it's creepy," the man snapped. Malik dropped his gaze fully. His vision blurred. Then the flight attendant approached him again. Her smile was plastic. Her eyes were tired. Her guilt was buried under policy and the comfort of the powerful. "Sir," she said softly, "I need you to keep your hands visible at all times." Malik's breath stopped. "What? Why?" "It's just a precaution," she whispered, glancing toward Ethan as if seeking approval even from this distance. "Some passengers feel uneasy." "But I'm not doing anything." Malik's voice shook. "Why do you think—" "Please," she cut him off. "Just cooperate." The humiliation was total, complete, public. He lifted his hands slowly onto his lap. Passengers watched him like he was an exhibit. Someone whispered, "See? I told you something was wrong." Someone else murmured, "He looks dangerous." Malik felt tears burning behind his eyes. He blinked them away. He refused to let them fall here. Not in front of these people, not in front of Ethan, not in front of the world that was determined to shrink him to nothing. The plane shook slightly through light turbulence. Seatbelt signs flickered. Passengers gasped lightly. Malik didn't move. He sat perfectly still, hands exposed, knees pressed together, back curled inward. A boy in the aisle muttered, "Why's he sitting like that?" His mother whispered, "Because he knows he's being watched." And she was right. He knew. Everyone knew. Even Ethan, far ahead, twisted to get a clearer view of his humiliation. His smirk widened. And in that moment, Malik promised himself something silently. He would never forget this seat, never forget this moment, never let this be the end of his story. But for now, he was trapped in 32B, next to the bathroom, next to whispers, next to fear that wasn't his, but was forced onto him. A seat that would scar him for years, and one day guide him to a cockpit none of these people could imagine. The cabin lights dimmed again, but for Malik, there was no sense of calm, no comfort, no easing into the flight, only the endless shuffle of feet, only the bathroom door slamming inches from his leg, only the constant, suffocating awareness of being watched. A man in line pretended to stretch, but really just looked Malik up and down, trying to see what type he was. Another shifted his wallet from his back pocket to his front, making sure Malik could see the gesture. Every minute carried a new insult, none spoken directly, yet all sharp enough to wound. A teenage girl leaned toward her mother and whispered, "Why do they seat? People like him here." Her mother pressed a finger to her lips. "Shh, just stay close to me." Malik looked down at his hands, still resting stiffly on his lap, exactly as the flight attendant instructed, as if he were some unpredictable creature that needed surveillance. He wanted to disappear, not die, not explode, just vanish. Slip into some unseen corner of the world where no one judged him for his skin, his clothes, his class, his mere presence. He pressed his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. But the humiliation replayed non-stop. Ethan's smirk, passengers' whispers, the attendant's forced smile, the bathroom line's fear. He felt his chest tighten again. Then something inside whispered, "Write it down. Don't let them erase this." Malik slowly reached into his backpack, careful not to move too quickly. Every sudden shift earned too many stares. Even zipping the bag open felt risky, like one wrong move could trigger another call button moment. He pulled out a small spiral notebook and a dull pencil. For a moment, he hesitated. He looked around. A man frowned at the sight of the notebook, whispering to his wife, "What's he doing now?" His wife shrugged nervously, as if even writing was suspicious. Malik forced himself to ignore them. Then he began, not loudly, not angrily, but with quiet, controlled precision, like a witness detailing a crime. Row 17A, white male, approx. 40s, platinum status take statement. Don't seat that boy next to me. Insinuation of theft. Accusations of suspicious behavior. Attendance reaction. Moved me instead of addressing him. His hand shook. He steadied it. Public humiliation in aisle. Passengers staring. Bathroom seat assignment despite empty seat in 28C. A woman in line leaned sideways, trying to read his writing. When she realized he was writing about the incident, her eyes widened. She stepped away quickly, whispering, "He's taking notes about us." Malik lowered the notebook slightly. He knew exactly what this scene looked like. A young black man in the back, scribbling fiercely, the target of social paranoia. But he wasn't going to stop. He couldn't. He kept writing. Attendant told me to keep my hands visible. Passengers murmuring fear, multiple comments implying I'm dangerous. His pencil dug deep into the paper. The line for the bathroom thinned. For a moment, he was alone. He breathed, finally, without someone's shadow hovering over him. He turned the page. He wrote the truth he hadn't spoken aloud. I did nothing wrong. I was judged for being poor. I was judged for being black. I was judged for existing in a seat too close to them. The bathroom door opened again. A man brushing past bumped Malik's shoulder. Instead of apologizing, the man frowned and said, "You shouldn't sit so close to the aisle," Malik whispered. "This is my seat." "Then move your shoulder," the man snapped and walked off. Malik grew very still. He pressed his pencil tip into the paper until it snapped. Another small humiliation, another sting, another piece of evidence. He tucked the broken pencil into the metal booklet holder. He continued writing with the shorter half. When he finished, his fingers ached. His chest felt hollow, but there on the paper lay the beginning of something bigger than his pain, something he didn't fully understand yet. After the flight landed, disembarkation dragged. Passengers made a point not to make eye contact with Malik. Some looked relieved he hadn't caused an incident. Some looked smug. Some still looked frightened of nothing. The flight attendant approached, offering a stiff, brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for cooperating today," she said mechanically. "We appreciate your compliance." Malik looked at her, really looked. She was tired, exhausted, but she also chose Ethan over him, chose status over fairness, chose comfort over dignity. He nodded once, sure. But inside he was screaming. At the jet bridge, he pulled out his notebook again. He looked at the airline logo, then at the office email printed at the bottom of his boarding pass. He typed up a formal complaint at the airport terminal. Every detail, every insult, every coded accusation, every ounce of humiliation. He attached photos of his notes. He pressed send. 2 days later, he received a response. "We apologize for any inconvenience. Your feedback is important to us. Here is a $75 travel voucher for the trouble." A template. Generic dismissive to cold. Malik stared at the screen for a long time. Then he printed the complaint, and the reply, and the boarding pass, and every page of his handwritten notes. He placed them in a folder. He didn't know why he felt the need to keep them. Not yet. He just knew he would not let the world pretend it didn't happen. Not this time. Not again. He didn't know it then, but that small, quiet act would one day change an entire airline. For days after the flight, Malik felt like the humiliation was stitched into his skin. He replayed every whisper, every stare, every accusation, every moment someone instinctively placed a hand over their wallet when he walked by in the terminal. He ate dinner alone in his mother's kitchen, pushing rice around his plate while she asked softly, "Baby, you okay?" He lied. "I'm fine." But late at night, when the house fell quiet except for the hum of the fridge, he opened the folder again. The printed complaint, the rejection letters, the notes from seat 32B, and he read every word, not to torture himself, to remind himself, to remember the pain, The humiliation, the way the world treated him like he didn't belong anywhere but the back of the plane. And buried under all that hurt, a stubborn ember glowed brighter each time. You don't get to stay in 32B. Not forever. Not if you fight. The next 10 years were nothing but turbulence. Malik took the only job he could. Get nights at a grimy auto shop that reeked of oil and rain-soaked tires. He worked until 4 a.m., hands blistered and numb, then walked 2 miles to catch the first bus to community college. His classmates were younger, wealthier, carefree. He was exhausted, hungry, often ashamed. Some professors assumed he wouldn't last. One advisor even told him, "You're bright, Malik, but aviation? That's ambitious. Maybe aim for something more realistic." She meant something for someone like you. He heard it clearly, even if she didn't say it aloud. He didn't argue. He never did. But that night he studied until dawn. During breaks, he sat in cafeteria corners, devouring aviation textbooks he bought secondhand. Pages yellowed, covers cracked. He watched cockpit recordings on YouTube until his phone overheated. He didn't go out, didn't buy new clothes, didn't have friends. He saved every spare dollar. Some nights, he fell asleep over homework, forehead pressed to the kitchen table. His mother would drape a blanket around his shoulders and whisper, "Don't break yourself, baby. You deserve rest, too." But Malik was terrified that if he stopped, even for a moment, his dream would slip away. He couldn't go back to feeling powerless. He couldn't go back to seat 32B. He couldn't go back to being the problem people whispered about. Not ever again. It took 3 years to finally afford flight school. Not a prestigious one. Not the kind wealthy kids attended. A rundown airfield with peeling paint and trainers older than some instructors. But it was a cockpit. The first time Malik touched the yoke of a small Cessna, he felt something electric shoot up his arms. This is where you belong. But aviation didn't go easy on him. He failed his first solo check ride. Weather panic, stalled nerves. The examiner wrote, "Promising but lacks confidence." Confidence? After everything? After 10 years of people convincing him he was a threat, a mistake, a burden? Confidence was a luxury he didn't have. But resilience, that he had in abundance. He trained harder, asked more questions, practiced until his eyes burned. He passed on the second try. Then came instrument training. Simulators, night flights, crosswinds that slammed the plane sideways. He wasn't naturally gifted. He wasn't the golden boy trainee instructors bragged about. He was the one who refused to quit. When he couldn't afford extra hours, he bartered, changing oil, fixing spark plugs, scrubbing the hangar floor. Other trainees laughed behind his back. Look at him. He's basically working as a janitor. Can he even afford fuel? He'll drop out. They always do. But Malik swallowed every insult and kept going. Because the sky didn't care how poor he was. The sky didn't judge the color of his skin, only whether he could fly. By the time he earned his commercial license, he had aged a decade in spirit. He applied to regional airlines. Weeks of silence. Months of, unfortunately, some interviews where captains sized him up with polite skepticism. But one tiny airline, barely above a flying bus service, gave him a chance. The captain on his first day looked him over and said, "Long road to get here, huh?" Malik nodded. "Well," the captain said, "I don't care where you came from. Show me you can fly." So Malik flew. For 2 years, he bounced between small routes, thunderstorms, mechanical failures, rude passengers, exhausting schedules. He slept in cheap motels, ate instant noodles, saved every cent. Every time he opened his suitcase, the folder was inside. A reminder, a wound, a compass, motivation. He whispered to it sometimes, one day, I'll make it matter." When he finally earned enough hours, he applied to the major airline, the same one that shoved him into 32B years earlier. He almost didn't hit submit, but he did. When he received the job offer, he opened the email 5 separate times to make sure it was real. His mother cried. He cried. But quietly, because some wounds never stop aching. He walked into the airline's training center wearing a crisp new uniform, the pilot wings on his chest gleaming like redemption. But even then, he felt phantom whispers around him. He looks nervous. He doesn't belong up front. He's not the type you usually see fly. He ignored them. Because now, for the first time ever, the seat with his name on it wasn't 32B. It was the left seat, the captain's chair. He wasn't there yet, but it was waiting. And Malik vowed, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with unwavering determination. When he reached it, he would change the skies that tried to break him. The morning Malik put on his first official major airline uniform, he froze in front of the mirror. It didn't feel real. Crisp white shirt, navy jacket with perfect lines, stripes on his shoulders. 2 for now, but the left seat wasn't far. Tie knotted just right. Hat tucked under his arm like a promise. He stared into his own reflection, into the brown eyes that once stared at a bathroom door slamming inches from his knee. He whispered, barely audible, "You didn't stay in 32B." He didn't smile, didn't need to. The uniform spoke for him. At the airport crew lounge, people glanced up as he walked in. Some did double takes, some nodded politely. A few looked surprised to see a black pilot, maybe their first time. One older first officer stood up to shake his hand. "Captain Johnson," he said, reading the name on the file. "Welcome aboard." Malik blinked. He hadn't gotten used to the title yet. "Thanks," he said, voice steady, hiding the storm of emotions beneath. They headed toward the jet bridge. A flight attendant passing by gave the first officer a cheerful greeting, then looked at Malik, hesitated for half a heartbeat, and forced a brittle smile. He knew that. Look, he'd lived inside it for half his life. But this time, he walked past her, into the cockpit, where he belonged. He took the left seat for pre-check training, running through switches and screens with ease. His fingers moved like they were dancing across the surface of a familiar dream. Fuel gauges, check. Flight management system, check. Navigation, aligned. Autopilot, standby. Every sound, every display, every button. It all settled into his bones. The cockpit felt like a cathedral, a sanctuary, a place the world once told him he didn't deserve, didn't belong, couldn't reach. And yet, here he was, not asking permission, not apologizing for taking up space, not shrinking himself to fit someone else's comfort. Boarding began. The cabin filled with the hum of passengers, roller bags banging overhead, flight attendants reciting safety patter, parents arguing with restless kids. Malik watched through the open cockpit door. He saw people, ordinary people, rich, poor, loud, silent. Some kind, some rude, not threats, not situations, not problems, just people. The contrast stabbed him in the heart. He remembered Ethan's face, the whispers, the fear, the way he was shoved into the bathroom row like trash. And now, here he was, the one responsible for all of them, every soul on board, their safety, their lives. The irony was sharp enough to bleed. A light rap on the cockpit door pulled him back. A young black boy, maybe 7 years old, peered in shyly, clutching a toy plane. His mother stood behind him, apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Captain," she said quickly. "He just wanted to see—" Malik smiled gently. "It's all right. Come here, buddy." The boy stepped forward, eyes wide at the glowing panels. "You fly all this?" he whispered. Malik nodded. "Yep. All of it." The boy stared with awe, then whispered the question that split Malik's heart open. "Can someone like me do that too?" Malik swallowed, hard. He crouched to the child's level, lowering his voice. "I sat in the very last seat once," he said quietly, "right in front of the bathroom. People said I didn't belong anywhere near the front, but look at me now." The boy's eyes shined. His mother wiped a tear. "Remember this," Malik said, touching the toy plane lightly. "They don't decide where you belong. You do." The boy nodded fiercely. When they left, Malik wiped his palms on his pants, grounding himself. He was the pilot he wished he'd seen when he was young, the role model he never had, the reassurance he once desperately needed. During cruise altitude, turbulence began to roll through the cabin. A mild shake, nothing severe. Still, passengers tensed. A few gasped. Someone rang the call button. Malik picked up the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Johnson. We're encountering a patch of light turbulence. Nothing to be concerned about. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." His voice, calm, warm, controlled, spread through the cabin. Dozens of people exhaled at once. A flight attendant whispered to another, "He's good. Really good." Malik didn't react, but the words stung a bit. Good, because he was skilled, or good, because he wasn't what they expected. He pushed the thought away. Focus. A few minutes later, the turbulence passed. The cabin relaxed again, but Malik's mind didn't. He couldn't stop thinking about how this very airline, the one he served, the one he protected, the one whose uniform he wore, once treated him like a threat simply for breathing. He wondered if the flight attendant who humiliated him was still working somewhere in this same system. He wondered how many other passengers like him were still being whispered about, feared, relocated, managed. The cockpit lights flickered in the dimness. Malik stared at the controls. Out there, in the skies, he finally felt free. Down on the ground, in the world, he had fought every inch for that freedom. At landing, a manager boarded to greet the crew. A polished man with a stiff tie and the kind of corporate smile that never touched the eyes. "Captain Johnson," he said, shaking Malik's hand too firmly. "Congrats on completing your first rotation. We're building a new dignity and bias initiative. Leadership mentioned you might be someone to consult." Malik raised a brow. "Me?" "Yes. Your record's impressive. And, well," he gestured vaguely at Malik, at his skin, at the politics of appearances. "You fit the story the company wants to tell." A flicker of bitterness cut through Malik's chest. So that's what this was. Optics.representation. Another PR banner. Not genuine transformation. But he nodded anyway, because if the airline wanted a story, he had one to give. "A training review meeting is tomorrow," the manager said. "They're pulling old case files as examples of bias. It'll be interesting." He had no idea how right he was, because one of those files was Malik's. The complaint he wrote in C-32B, long forgotten by the airline, never forgotten by him. Malik straightened his hat. "I'll be there," he said quietly. As he walked out of the cockpit that night, down the aisle, past the rows, past the bathroom seat, he paused. Seat 32B, empty, small, cramped, unassuming. He touched the headrest gently. A ghost of his past stared back at him. "Never again," he whispered. And then he left the cabin, not as a passenger the world tried to diminish, but as the man who would soon hold the power to change the very airline that once broke him. The conference room looked ordinary, glass walls, carpet too clean, corporate posters about integrity and service. But Malik felt something unsettling the moment he stepped inside. A pressure, a heaviness. 12 managers sat around the table, each with laptops open. At the front, the compliance eye. Officers sorted through a thick stack of old case files labeled Passenger Bias, 10 years of incidents. "Captain Johnson," she said warmly, "thank you for joining us. We're reviewing cases for our new dignity training." Malik nodded and took a seat. He didn't know why he felt nervous, but something was coming. He could feel it. The officer clicked a remote. A title slid onto the screen, recognizing bias in the cabin, real incidents. She lifted the first few files, describing them briefly, unpleasant, but typical. Then she paused on one particular folder, thicker, heavier, pages slightly bent from years of storage. "This one," she said, "is one of the clearest documented examples of bias we've ever had." She opened it. Malik saw it. At first a flicker, then a shock in his chest. The handwriting on the top page looked familiar. Too familiar. The officer began to read. Incident date, May 8th, 10 years ago. Flight from Chicago to Denver. Passenger in 17B, young black male, was accused of suspicious behavior by a Platinum Elite passenger. Crew moved him to the back seat near the lavatory. A few managers frowned. The officer continued. The accused passenger later filed a detailed complaint describing public humiliation, coded racist language, and fear-based reactions from surrounding travelers. She placed the pages on the table. One slid directly toward Malik. He stared down. His breath caught. It was his handwriting, his notebook lines, his careful lettering, his pain inked in desperation a decade earlier. I did nothing wrong. I was judged for being black. I was judged for being poor. His vision blurred for a moment. No one else realized yet. The officer clicked another link. A muted cabin video flickered onto the screen. A young Malik standing in the aisle, clutching his backpack, passengers staring, whispering, pulling away from him. Then the attendant pointing toward the back. Then Malik walking down the aisle, head low, shoulders collapsed. The room tensed. A VP whispered, "This is awful." Another said, "How did we allow this?" A manager muttered, shaking his head, "This cannot represent our airline today." The compliance officer flipped another page. The elite passenger in 17A who sparked the incident was named. She paused. Her voice tightened. "Ethan Carr." A ripple moved across the room. "The investor candidate?" the VP asked sharply. "Candidate?" the officer repeated. "Yes," someone confirmed. "He's being considered for a board advisory role." Malik felt heat spread in his chest. The man who had humiliated him was being elevated by the same airline he now served. The compliance officer frowned. "Well, after reading this, that's a major problem." Everyone murmured agreement. Then someone asked, "And the victim?" "The passenger moved to the bathroom seat. Do we know what happened to him?" Another answered, confused. "The report doesn't list follow-up. No name recorded, just initials, MJ." Every head slowly turned toward Malik. He didn't hide. He didn't look away. He spoke quietly, but the room heard every syllable. "That was me." Silence fell, thick, heavy, jaw-dropping. The compliance officer covered her mouth. "Oh my God, Captain, I'm so sorry." Malik nodded once. "I don't need apologies," he said, voice steady. "I need this never to happen again." The VP leaned forward, expression grave. "This case goes in the training, front and center, no debate." Someone else added, "And Ethan Carr's candidacy ends today." A director pushed the folder toward Malik. "Captain Johnson," he said gently, "would you be willing to help us rewrite the dignity policy? Your experience, it could change everything." Malik looked down at the folder, at the pages that held a younger version of himself, at the humiliation he carried for years like a scar. He touched the edge of the paper. In the reflection on the screen, he saw two versions of himself layered together. The boy in 32B and the captain at this table. "I'll help," he said. Not for revenge, not to punish, to rebuild, to protect the next kid who might otherwise end up in that seat. "Good," the VP said, relieved. "We start immediately." As they began discussing policy changes, Malik inhaled deeply, slowly, feeling something shift inside him. His past wasn't a weight anymore. It was power. He glanced at the video freeze frame still on the screen. Himself, 10 years younger, being ordered down the aisle. He whispered inside his mind, "I see you. I didn't forget you. And I never will." When the meeting ended, Malik walked out of the glass room, not as the boy who was shoved to the back, but as the man who would help rewrite the entire airline's future. The next morning, a storm gathered, not outside the windows, but inside the executive floor. When Malik arrived for the follow-up meeting, he found the HR director pacing with a stack of documents, jaw tight, eyes blazing with the kind of fury reserved for betrayal and embarrassment. "Captain Johnson," she said, motioning him inside, "you'll want to hear this." She placed a report on the table, Formal notice of ethical disqualification, Ethan Carr reason, documented history of passenger harassment and bias below it were summaries of 2 older complaints from other airlines. One involved a Middle Eastern man. Carr claimed made him uncomfortable. Another involved a Latina woman he accused of acting suspicious for praying quietly. Patterns, exact patterns, the same behavior he used against Malik. The HR director shook her head. He hid these incidents. If we'd promoted him, it would have blown up in the press. The VP entered next, frustrated. He's furious, he said. He actually said we misinterpreted events. Typical. Malik said nothing. He didn't need to. Corporate justice wasn't emotional. It was official, precise, cold, and in this case, righteous. Effective immediately, the VP continued. Carr is barred from investment, partnership, advisory positions, and priority influence. They looked at Malik, the man Carr had mocked, humiliated, reduced to a problem. Now sat at the table where their decisions were made. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The airline drafted a statement, not public yet, but internal, mandatory reading for all staff. Case study: the bathroom seat passenger, how fear, bias, and status can destroy dignity without names. But everyone would feel the truth. Malik reviewed every line, every policy change, every mandatory training step. Add this, he said, pointing at one line. No passenger, under any circumstance, should be relocated solely because someone feels uneasy without evidence. The director nodded, typing quickly. And here, Malik added, explicitly defined coded language. Terms like your kind, looks suspicious, makes me uncomfortable. These phrases carry racial and class bias. Done, she said. And training, Malik continued. Don't make it optional, and don't water it down. Show real footage, real stories. You're the reason we're building this, the VP admitted. We'll follow your lead. Malik had never been given that kind of authority before. Not in school, not at his old jobs, not in society. But here, in the very institution that once buried his dignity, he was being asked to rebuild it. During their lunch break, Malik walked the terminal alone. Passengers wandered, dragging roller bags, clutching coffees, some stressed, some calm, some unaware of the worlds other people carried. Near gate C12, a commotion erupted. Flight delays, weather issues, passengers complaining loudly. And then he saw it. A young black boy sitting alone in the last row of the waiting area, legs dangling, backpack worn, eyes tired. He looked just like Malik used to, trying not to take space, trying not to be noticed, trying not to be a burden. Malik approached gently. You flying today? The boy nodded. Uh-huh. But my seat's in the very back, right by the bathrooms. His voice tried to sound brave, but the worry cracked through. Malik sat beside him. You know, he said softly, I sat in that seat once. The boy blinked. You did? Yeah, Malik nodded. And it hurt. Made me feel small. Made me feel like the world decided where I deserved to sit. The boy swallowed. I feel that too. Malik smiled faintly. Let me tell you something important, he said. The seat they assign you today doesn't tell you who you are or who you'll become. The boy's eyes lifted. What did you become? He asked. Malik held out his hand. Captain Malik Johnson. I fly the big ones now. The boy's jaw dropped. You're a pilot? Malik winked. Want to see the cockpit after the flight? The boy nodded so fast he nearly fell off the chair. A gate agent nearby overheard and stepped closer. Captain Johnson, everything okay? Yes, Malik said. Just making sure this young man knows he belongs on this plane. The agent smiled knowingly, and Malik realized this wasn't just a moment. It was a seed planted in a kid who now saw possibilities where once he saw limitations, the legacy he needed. Late that night, Malik boarded his next flight. Before entering the cockpit, he paused. His gaze drifted down the aisle, over the rows, past the business seats, past the exit rows, until it landed on 32B. Empty, still silent, always waiting for the next person society would try to shrink. He walked toward it slowly, pressed his fingers against the headrest, closed his eyes. He didn't see the dirty walls of the bathroom row. He saw the boy he was and the man he became. He whispered, "You don't get to define me anymore." He straightened, walked back up the aisle, and stepped into the cockpit, the place he'd fought 10 years to reach. The door shut behind him. For the first time in his life, he felt the past finally let go, and the sky opened for him. Malik Johnson never sought revenge. He never needed to see Ethan Carr punished or dragged through headlines. What he wanted, what he fought for, was something far more powerful. Change in the airline, change in the system, change in the quiet assumptions that decided whether a young black man was treated as a threat or treated as a human being. Because dignity isn't something you earn, it's something you're owed. And Malik made sure no passenger after him would ever have to fight for it. His story became the backbone of the airline's new training, the case every employee studied. His words, written in a trembling notebook in seat 32B, transformed into corporate policy. His pain became protection for others. Years later, pilots would mention him in training rooms. Flight attendants would quote his principles. And kids, especially kids who looked like him, would point at the cockpit and say, "If he could get there, why not me?" But the real legacy wasn't the policy. It was the truth Malik carried. Where you sit today has nothing to do with how high you can fly. And if you believe dignity should never depend on someone's seat, skin, or status, tap like to push this message further. Subscribe for more true-to-life stories of courage, justice, and quiet triumph. Every week, we rise higher. Together. Comment one word that describes Malik's journey. I'm reading every single one.